One person is dead and another critically injured as police investigate the latest homicide in the city. Good afternoon. The scene is on Silverthorne Avenue in the Keele and Eglinton area.
Police were first called to a shooting and stabbing incident. CTV's Raheem Ladani is at the scene and joins us now live with more details. Raheem.
Nathan and Natalie, good afternoon. There is still a small police presence holding the scene behind me. We've also seen a number of investigators knock on doors, not only on this street, but adjacent ones as well. They're canvassing for witnesses and also surveillance video as they investigate the city's 85th homicide of the year. Police cruisers lit up this residential street north of St. Clair overnight, a surprise to residents who saw officers responding after reports someone had been shot.
Never really had any issues around here, so this is very shocking to me that it happened. Very shocking to me at 3 a.m. when I came home.
You think you are safe and then you see something like that? I don't know, but fingers crossed, we have to be positive all the time, right? Things happen.
Police say a 29-year-old man was found inside this semi-detached home on Silverthorne Avenue, suffering from gunshot wounds. He was later pronounced dead on scene. A 58-year-old man was also inside with stab wounds. He was taken to hospital in stable condition.
The two men are related and they both reside at the house together.
The K-9 unit was called in as investigators continue their search for two suspects, believed to be men wearing dark clothes.
I understand how an incident like this can cause concern within the community. I can tell you that I believe this to be a targeted incident and that it is isolated.
The name of the deceased has not yet been released. You heard the detective sergeant say that he believes that this incident was targeted. He was asked, though, how he believes the two suspects gained entry into the home and what followed thereafter. The detective sergeant says he does have a good sense of what happened, but at this time, police are not making that information public. Reporting live, I'm Raheem Ladani. I'll send it back to you both in studio.
Thank you, Raheem. Now to the Bathurst and Lawrence area where a heavy machine has been used to rob a bank.
A backhoe was used to tear an ATM out of the wall early this morning. CTV's Mike Walker is following this story and joins us now live with the latest. Mike.
Well, Natalie, Nathan, you can see crews are making repairs to the front of the bank. Police say after the suspects broke in, they removed an ATM and cash.
The front windows of this bank smashed in after police say this backhoe was used to crash into the bank. The ATM was removed and cash was stolen. The scene leaving bank employees arriving for work this morning speechless.
I'm a little bit sad and depressed, and I can't tell, I'm so shocked so far.
Investigators say the break and enter happened around 4:30 this morning at the TD Bank located in a plaza in the Bathurst and Lawrence area. The damage to the bank is significant. At this point, police cannot say how much money was stolen. It's also not clear where the backhoe came from. Customers arriving this morning to withdraw money are in disbelief.
This is unbelievable. It is absolutely crazy that the length people would go to take things that don't belong to them.
You're not just gonna think for one day to do this, right? I think they make it plan, and then that's why.
At this point, no arrests have been made. Police say no injuries were reported.
Now, at this point, police have not released any suspect descriptions or haven't said how many suspects they believe were involved. There are several surveillance cameras in this plaza, including two at the front of the bank. No doubt investigators will be combing through that for any potential information. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Still to come, it's happened again. A Fairview Mall jewelry store has been targeted in a smash and grab robbery for the second time in 2 weeks. We've got more news in a moment, but first, here's a live look at the city this afternoon. We've had some sunshine this morning, but the clouds are moving in, and we are staying above seasonal. But if you got plans to celebrate outside tonight, there's a chance of active weather. Jessica Smith is here with a look at the current conditions. So what do we mean by active weather?
We're watching for a Colorado low moving in. So it's going to bring rain for most and then transition over to snow as we head into the first day of 2025. So you'll need your rain gear, but at least it stays mild. We're holding on above seasonal as we head throughout the rest of our day and the last day of 2024. Now, we're generally just cloudy right now, but we're starting to see this system push its way in as we head throughout the late afternoon, early evening. Temperature-wise, though, right across southern Ontario, still quite mild. We're well above seasonal as we round out the year and at least step into the day tomorrow before things take a bit of a shift. Right now through the islands, through Pearson, between about 3 and 4 degrees, a fairly light wind as we get throughout the first half of our day. Into this afternoon, though, those winds will start to pick up. It gets gusty and it gets rainy. Coming up, your full forecast right now. Back over to Natalie.
Okay, thank you, Jess. To Fairview Mall now, and another brazen smash and grab robbery. It happened late last night. It is the second time in 2 weeks that the same jewelry store has been targeted. 3 teens have now been arrested. Let's bring in CTV's public safety analyst, Chris Lewis. Sir, thank you for joining us. This is the second smash and grab robbery at the same jewelry store in 2 weeks, and it is one of several in the past month or so. What's happening here?
Well, it's scary stuff. I mean, imagine how the employees and patrons of the establishment feel when this sort of thing happens. It scares the heck out of everybody, and very difficult to deal with because you've got unarmed security guards who aren't in the job to lose their lives. And, you know, these guys are carrying hammers or some sort of heavy implement to ultimately smash the glass. So it's very difficult to contain and deal with in a reactionary way. But I think the jewelry stores are going to have to get tougher around what kind of glass they use and some of the security measures that they have in place to try and stop this sort of thing from occurring.
And what do you make of the fact that it is teenagers being arrested here?
Well, it's teenagers ultimately, because organized crime are most often coordinating these sorts of incidents. And ultimately, kids aren't going to get any heavy penalty. So they recruit them to do the dirty work, and of course, then they get the profits from it all. So it is very concerning on a number of fronts. But once again, most importantly, no one was hurt here, but certainly absolutely frightened to death as they watch this occur.
You mentioned businesses potentially changing the type of glass or other materials that they use for their display cases. Is there anything else that these stores can do to protect themselves?
No, I mean, this is happening all over North America. And so undoubtedly there's lessons to be learned here. It all comes at a cost, whether it's putting hardened glass of some sort in there, whether it's controlling access to jewelry stores. And in a mall situation, generally can just walk out of the hallway right up to the display case. Does that need to change? It's all sad that it has to occur. And ultimately, consumers are going to pay the price to have that done because somebody has to pay for all those security measures. But they're going to have to because it's just going to continue. They know it's an easy target now, and they're pulling it off. Thankfully, some have been caught in this case, and maybe more to come.
And it's one thing, I suppose, to try to protect against the use of a hammer, but in a separate incident this morning, a backhoe was used to rob a bank.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this happen around Ontario in the past. I recall some in OPP jurisdiction, not necessarily with a backhoe, but using a truck and chains to pull these things out of the wall. They're very heavy, up to 1,000 pounds, some of these ATMs, but there's a lot of cash in them as well. It could be up to $100,000 in any given one, particularly those that are located right within bank walls. Police will be onto it. Someone out there knows what's happened. But once again, you know, it's just people out there stealing. Ultimately, if they put the effort into actually finding honest work, maybe there'd be less of this sort of thing. But that's just the way of the world.
And so what is the biggest challenge then for police when they are investigating these kinds of incidents?
Well, ultimately, obviously, it's a total whodunit. It could have been someone from hundreds of miles away that did it. But somebody out there knows who did it. Likely not. This is not likely organized crime involvement. So it's more petty theft. Folks, and they tell people, and ultimately someone's got a pile of cash out there right now that didn't have it yesterday. So hopefully the police will get information from someone through Crime Stoppers or whatever means. But it's a whodunit right at the beginning, unless someone saw a license plate or they got some camera footage of something that may help identify the suspects.
Okay, CTV's public safety analyst, Chris Lewis, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Well, Canadian tennis player Gabriela Dabrowski has revealed that she has been diagnosed with cancer this year.
The double star continued to compete following surgery and treatment. She posted about her diagnosis on Instagram today. The 3-time Grand Slam champion says, "The unseen of 2024. How can something so small cause such a big problem? This is the question I asked myself when I was diagnosed with breast cancer back in mid-April. I know this will come as a shock to many, but I am okay, and I will be okay. Early detection saves lives. I can wholeheartedly agree with this." Following 2 surgeries and a 3-month break, Dabrowski won the WTA finals in Saudi Arabia and reached the doubles final at Wimbledon. She says she began to really appreciate what she has when the threat of losing everything she'd worked for her entire life became a real possibility.
College students in Ontario will be heading back to class under the cloud of a strike threat by teachers.
There's a January 4th strike deadline. Both sides have agreed to mediation next week. Let's go to CTV's Beth McDonnell with the latest on this. Beth.
Nathan, OPSU tells me today that there will not be a strike on January 4th. While it will be in a legal position to strike, it needs to give 5 days notice for that strike, and that has not yet happened today. Still, for thousands of students across Ontario, the threat of a strike looms. The union says a big issue is precarious work, that faculty don't have a lot of job security and move from one short contract to another. Another issue is quality of education, and it's saying too often faculty are trying to get students out the door rather than focusing on the learning. The union says it's asking for about a 5% increase in wages to keep up with inflation. The College Employer Council is the bargaining agent for Ontario's colleges. They didn't respond to our request so far today, but in the past, it has asked the union to reconsider demands. Institutions have said the federal cap on international students is taking a toll amid growing deficits, layoffs, and program cuts. Meanwhile, students that I'm talking to are a little worried.
It affects, in the long run, it'll affect my placement because I'm a placement student. So my hours really count on the strike actually not happening, and that delays graduation, it delays my plans because I'm also an international student. So it also delays my, applications for postgraduate work permits, things like that. So honestly, I'm just hoping that they come to some sort of conclusion or like an agreement or a settlement of that sort so that I can just get to rest and be able to put my mind at ease in regards to this whole thing.
It is what it is. Whatever happens, happens, and then we just deal with it and process it as we go. So we're definitely waiting to see what the outcome is, but either way, I hope everything works itself out.
The union says there will be mediation talks on January 6th and 7th, and to expect an update after that. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell. Natalie and Nathan, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Beth. Next to a possible blow to businesses in Toronto, local exporters concerned about the impact of possible Trump tariffs.
Many on this side of the border are worried about the impending toll. CTV's Sean Leathon has the details.
Walking through her Toronto warehouse, Danny Kagan has been looking forward to growing her luxury footwear business in the United States, but that could soon change.
The idea that a tariff could come is honestly pretty devastating.
Hi, we're Danny and Victoria.
Kagan is the co-founder of Maeve & Shea, a company that makes stylish slippers designed to provide ergonomic support.
And when I couldn't find a supportive slipper that was also genuinely stylish and elegant, I started making them myself.
The company launched 2.5 years ago and has been growing steadily. Most orders come directly to the website. The slippers are manufactured in Brazil and shipped to Canada for distribution. Maeve & Shea have been able to keep pricing consistent, around $200 a pair, while offering free shipping in Canada and the U.S. As of now, about 15% of their business comes from the U.S.
But in the last 6 months or so, we've been starting to really push our U.S. Customer base.
Enter the threat of a 25% tariff on all goods coming from Canada into the United States.
There's a lot of uncertainty with the tariff and what it actually means for us.
Cato Pastol is the CEO of Lending Loop, a cross-border banking platform helping businesses like Maeve & Shea expand into the U.S.
If we look over the next 5 to 10 years, we strongly believe that cross-border trade and sales into the U.S. is only going to grow.
Pastol says that more than half of all products Canadians buy come from the U.S., and more than 30 U.S. states list Canada as their #1 trading partner for both imports and exports.
These numbers are just fundamentally too big to disappear overnight.
So he's telling clients to continue to pursue the U.S. market while also looking to expand elsewhere, like Europe.
Which is almost sold out, actually.
It's a strategy shift that Kagan is looking into with the knowledge that they could lose some competitiveness in the short term.
I don't think it's going to stop us from selling in the U.S., but I do think it's going to force a lot of small businesses like Maeve & Shea to think about increasing pricing,
while remaining hopeful that a diplomatic solution will prevent tariffs and continue expansion. Sean Leathong, CTV News.
Take a look. This is all that is left. A pole on the west side of Parkside after one of the city's busiest speed cameras was torn down for a third time in 2 months. And an advocacy group calling for action from the city to address the issue. CTV's Carol Charles has the details.
This is where one of the city's busiest speed cameras was found, much to the shock and dismay of local residents.
I think it's kind of crazy that there are people out there that are so dedicated to getting out of tickets and other drivers out of tickets going down this very dangerous street. This camera's here to protect people.
Faraz Golizada, Safe Parkside's co-chair, says the camera was removed sometime early Sunday morning.
I was able to follow the trail down here where they dragged the camera and dumped it into the duck pond behind us. So these were very committed vandals.
It's the third time in 2 months that the camera has been removed. In November, the unit was cut down less than 24 hours after it was reinstalled.
Something's got to give. Somebody's going to catch these midnight bandits who just keep sawing down these cameras. It's nuts.
Golizada says he's disappointed with the lack of action by the city.
A single speed camera on this 2-kilometer street is not going to make the street safe. This camera has racked up tens of thousands of tickets. It's earned the city millions in revenue and has provided very little in the form of safety for residents.
In a statement to CTV News Toronto, a spokesperson for the city says it condemns all acts of theft and vandalism, tampering with, damaging or stealing an automated speed enforcement device negatively impacts road safety and allows dangerous speeding to continue near vulnerable road users. The city also says they don't own these speed cameras, and it's the vendor's responsibility to fix or replace the units. Issues of speeding on Parkside Drive go back as far as 2021, when an elderly couple was killed in a 5-car crash after a driver traveling more than double the speed limit rear-ended their vehicle. The city says data shows speed cameras have been effective at reducing speeds where they have been installed. Toronto police aren't currently investigating the incident, and a request for a comment from the vendor was not returned. Carol Charles, CTV News.
Members of the Jewish community gathered at Yonge and Eglinton last night to celebrate Hanukkah. A 12-foot menorah was lit yesterday evening at the Yonge Eglinton Center. It was designed by local artist Yehuda Lang. The menorah is lit each night during the 8-day holiday. Jewish tradition says it commemorates a miracle following the Maccabees' victory over the Greeks when there was only enough oil for 1 day in the temple, but the oil burned for 8 nights. Earlier in the day, a Hanukkah celebration was held to light the new permanent menorah outside Vaughan City Hall.
To the best of my knowledge, it is the only such menorah in the world, perhaps in the state of Israel, but I don't even know if in Israel there are city halls with permanent menorahs. It is certainly the only permanent menorah at a city hall outside of Israel. And that, for us, as citizens in the city of Vaughan, should give us a great deal of joy, pride, and thankfulness.
The menorah serves as a symbol of light, hope, and the endurance of faith, and celebrates the triumph of light over darkness.
Just under 12 hours now until Toronto rings in the new year, but it's already 2025 in a number of countries. A spectacular fireworks display signaled the start of the new year in Sydney, Australia. It stretched 7 kilometers along the harbor, where more than 1 million people attended. Countries in the South Pacific Ocean are the first to welcome in the new year. Midnight in Auckland, New Zealand struck at 6 a.m. our time, 18 hours before 2025 begins here. The city of Toronto will hold its annual celebration along the waterfront, featuring music, dance performances, and a 10-minute fireworks show.
It's dry for now, but we are watching for rain later, but we're told that it shouldn't impact the fireworks that we're seeing later on this evening here in the city. It is the last day of 2024, and we remain above seasonal as we step in towards the afternoon. We'll sit at about 4 degrees. We should be at -1. The winds are light now, but they are going to be gusty later on, so hold on to your hat and maybe bring an umbrella. Coming up, we'll have a full look at your long-range forecast as we say so long to 2024.
All right, less than 12 hours from now, we will be ringing in the new year. A couple 100,000 people expected down at the waterfront for the fireworks and the festivities.
Yeah, it's a big show. And a reminder, nothing's happening at City Hall.
No. Yes.
The waterfront, there's all kinds of places along the waterfront you can watch.
And you're going to need your umbrella because just In time for us to ring in the new year, we're looking at rain. A Colorado low moving in, set to bring some soggy weather, but you know what? At least it's mild. You'll need your raincoat, but maybe not your snowsuit. Regardless, it is going to be a little messy out there this afternoon, so take your time on the roads because that rain turns into snow as we head into 2025. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers you don't pay unless they win. Now, a little sunshine early on this morning, really beautiful. It feels like it has been forever and a day since we have seen the sun. So we had it just in time for the last day of 2024, but it was brief. And the cloud cover has made its way in as we get ready to welcome in not only a new year, but a system set to bring some pretty significant rain across parts of southern Ontario. Now, temperature-wise, it's not too bad. Easy for getting out to celebrate. We're looking at right now sitting at 3 degrees. We're at 4 through Windsor, the same through Ottawa, even extreme northern Ontario. All things considered, not too bad. Winds are light right now out of the northeast, but they get gusty as we head into the afternoon ahead of this system before it makes its way in. We're looking at a daytime high right around 4 degrees. It'll feel like, a little cooler, but the norm is -1. So everybody holding on above seasonal as we get ready to say so long to 2024. We're holding on, at least on the positive side, for a little while. Into this evening, we'll sit at 1 as we welcome in a brand new year. The norm is -8. So again, we are comfortably above that seasonal mark. Bancroft should be at -15, the same as Parry Sound, and they'll be relatively mild, all things considered. So yes, it is warm as we head out to celebrate if you're celebrating outside tonight, but it is going to be soggy as we watch for the system to push in just in time to bring in a brand new year. Again, the bulk of the system will be sitting south of us, but it's going to rotate and push all that active weather first as rain, then likely as a rain-snow mix as we head into the day tomorrow. So timing it all out. If you're heading out to celebrate and you're driving somewhere, do it sooner rather than later. As we head in towards about 5 o'clock, it begins towards Windsor and London. It makes its way into the GTA as we head in towards this evening. We strike the clock at midnight. We have that little bit of rain out there. And then as we head into the day tomorrow, it transitions over to more of a wet snow or a light flurry as the system continues to push out. The good news is we get a bit of a break into your Thursday and Friday, but we get really cold. So we go from being above seasonal back to kind of where we should be and even a little bit cooler as we step into the first few days of 2025. Again, today, it's not bad, at least temperature-wise. The rain rolls in later on this afternoon through the evening, turns into snow as we head in towards our Wednesday. And then we're hovering around the seasonal mark, and then we get a little bit cooler as we head in towards those first few days of 2025. But at least by Sunday, next Sunday, there's a little bit of sunshine. Nathan.
Thank you, Jess.
Hey.
To sports now, Canada's World Junior team will hit the ice tonight in Ottawa for their final game of the group stage. They're taking on the United States in a New Year's Eve clash. The top spot in their group is on the line, heading into the quarterfinals. Canada's coming off a 3-0 win over Germany Sunday night. The Americans lost to Finland in overtime in their last game. Both teams are currently tied with 7 points. Puck drop is set for just after 8. And we're joined by TSN's Mark Masters to break down the matchup ahead of tonight's rivalry game. I'm so glad that we've got something to watch on TV New Year's Eve, Mark. It has not been an easy ride for Canada so far, including losing one of their top defensemen earlier in the tournament. How will this impact them in the game?
Well, it's a big impact losing Matthew Schaefer to that injury. He was emerging as not just their best defenseman, but one of their best players in the tournament. Now, they've asked Sam Dickinson of the London Knights to move up. They felt that he responded very well in the game the other night against Germany. He's also taking over as the quarterback of the top power play unit. Dickinson leads the Ontario Hockey League all defensemen in the OHL in scoring this season. He's having a great year. They have reined him in a little bit early in the tournament, kind of try to get him to play a bit more of a well-rounded game. And now they feel like he's ready for more, and so far, so good.
How surprised are you about their success so far? What about Latvia?
Yeah, it's been a surprising preliminary round for Team Canada for sure. The loss to Latvia was stunning. Never seen that before at the World Juniors. And then it was much closer against Germany than the players expected for sure. It's been a struggle to score, right? We're used to seeing Canadian teams run up the score in some of these games in the preliminary round in recent years. That has not been the case this year, and they feel like they're not getting the bounces. They're snake bitten a little bit, but also they've talked about being on the perimeter too much, not getting to the blue paint, to the dirty areas, playing more of that Canadian game, right? That's kind of supposed to be the identity of this group. So they're trying to to change that here tonight against the Americans, the American team has scored twice as many goals as Canada so far here. They've also allowed many more goals than Canada, but they've scored a lot more. So it feels like Canada might need to find a little bit more offense here tonight. But their confidence hasn't been shaken. Jet Luchenko, the center, was just behind us here in the mix zone, telling us that they feel like they're in a great spot, and if they play their best, no one in the tournament can beat them.
Yeah, both teams play a really solid brand of hockey. TSN's Mark Masters, thank you.
The Toronto Maple Leafs have placed Austin Matthews on injured reserve. It is retroactive to December 20th, when the captain last played. Matthews is out with an upper body injury, but the team says he has not experienced any setbacks. Today's move allows the Leafs to recall a player ahead of this afternoon's game against the New York Islanders.
Domi back the other way. 2-on-1 with McMahon. Here's Max Domi. McMahon scores!
Toronto lost its last game 5-2 to the Capitals. Today, the Buds begin a home-and-home series with the Islanders, with the teams meeting again Thursday in Elmont, New York. The Leafs enter the contest trailing the first-place Florida Panthers by 2 points in the Atlantic Division standings.
Stacey, she's going to put on the speed. On a breakaway, Laura Stacey, she scores!
The Toronto Scepters host the Ottawa Charge tonight in Professional Women's Hockey League action. The game comes a day after the teams pulled off the first trade of the season. Defender Jocelyn Larocque and forward Victoria Bach were sent to Ottawa in exchange for defender Savannah Harmon and forward Haley Skimura. All 4 will be available for tonight's game. Meanwhile, the Raptors visit the defending champion Boston Celtics in NBA action tonight. Toronto saw its losing streak hit 10 games with a 136-107 loss to Atlanta on Sunday. The Celtics are 23-9 and occupy second place in the Eastern Conference.
Still to come, will it be 15, 20% or more when it comes to tipping at your next restaurant outing? It's become dinner conversation. We'll look into it after the break. Disinfecting wipes became very popular during the early stages of the pandemic, and they can be an easy way to clean up.
But depending on who is around, they could be doing more harm than good. Here is Pat Foran with Consumer Alert.
Disinfecting wipes claim they can keep the germs away. They're an easy way to scrub a dirty surface, and many parents use them to clean small hands. But the wipes are often unnecessary and can be harmful to children. Sales of disinfecting wipes skyrocketed in the early days of the pandemic. The wipes are convenient, but it turns out they're often overkill for a simple cleaning job.
Products labeled as disinfectants aren't simply cleaners. They also contain pesticides, and because of this, they require more careful handling than you might expect for a product that frequently appears on back-to-school supply lists.
In many disinfecting wipes, the active ingredients include quaternary ammonia compounds, or quats for short. They're effective at killing germs and are even used for infection control in some healthcare settings, like hospitals. But quats can also trigger health problems like lung irritation, asthma, and allergies.
These effects are especially concerning for kids because they breathe more air per pound of body weight than adults. No kids should be handling disinfecting wipes. Keep out of reach of children is right there on the label.
The American Cleaning Institute told Consumer Reports disinfectants are safe when used as directed. Disinfectants should not be applied by children. Most routine household chores require cleaning but not disinfecting. Old-fashioned soap and water will do the trick. If you like wipes convenience, there are plenty that clean but don't disinfect. Some cleaning products are considered safer than others. But certain situations, like a stomach bug, call for disinfecting to prevent the spread of infection. Thoroughly clean and disinfect the surface, allow plenty of time for it to dry, and keep children away from the area. If your child has a respiratory condition such as asthma, wipes should not be used around them. To stop the spread of germs, encourage good hand washing habits instead. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
Well, if you've got dinner plans for New Year's Eve tonight, just how much do you plan to tip?
It's a burning question, with businesses prompting for even higher tips and so-called tipflation. CTV's Janice Golding reports.
This is a very popular piece.
Tristan Joseph is a manager at Civil Liberties, a trendy Dovercourt Village cocktail bar. And the hospitality worker highlights just how important tipping can be for those in the industry.
It makes up a measurable portion of our income. So yeah, as of right now, it is we are dependent on them.
In fact, a late fall Angus Reid Atlas tipping trend survey shows that 71% of hospitality workers think tipping is important. But as the cost of living continues to rise, tipping practices have decreased 39% over the last 2 years.
I think people are opting out, or at least opting for the lower range on the point of sale. And I predicted that would happen. I think we've been pushed a little too far as consumers.
Food economist Mike Von Maslow has studied tipflation and says people are being asked to tip on a total that now includes the tax and provide gratuities in industries where tipping was never considered before, at higher rates than ever.
I've seen starting at 18, I've seen starting at 20. And I think that's why people are pushing back.
The survey also found 47% of respondents think tipping should be voluntary. 47% of people don't know how their tips are distributed, with 21% having no idea how much of their tip reaches the service provider.
When it comes down to hospitality, their desire to leave the tips is even higher when they know that the tips don't go to the business and they actually end up in the hands of the employees.
Afshin Musavian is CEO of Atlas, a platform that helps restaurants distribute their tips. He says 9 out of 10 hospitality operators want more transparency in tip distribution, which can be complex given it's divided among the team members working that shift, the number of hours worked, and seniority.
And then finally, ensuring that it meets federal and provincial regulations and compliance. We're looking to remove these challenges, bring more transparency to the consumers who want to know where the tips are going, the employees who deserve earning the tips, and simplicity for the operators who want to give the employees the tips.
Civil Liberties has been trying out the technology for about a month now.
I find it helpful, and it does help us comply with certain regulations and whatnot.
Professor Von Maslow says technology like this can be helpful, but people are still feeling the pinch despite a drop in inflation.
They are angry that they're being pushed so hard. So I think 2 things are going to happen. People are going to continue to opt out or go out less. People are going to push back at places where they don't think they need to tip. And if they're doing that, then they're also going to rethink their entire tipping protocol.
And he predicts hospitality providers will respond by lowering their expectations and tip prompts on card reading machines. Janice Golding, CTV News.
Next to a story about the ludicrous and the laughable calls to 911 at an ABC call center.
BC emergency call operators are calling out the most absurd 911 calls that keep clogging up their phone lines. CTV's Andrew Johnson reports.
911, do you need police, fire, ambulance?
When emergency call takers like Laura Fiddler get on the line, every second counts.
We need to make sure that we have our lines free for somebody who's truly in a life or death emergency.
BC's largest 911 dispatch center, ECOM, handles more than 2 million calls per year. Most are legitimate emergencies. Some are downright silly.
Someone staining your shirt is not enough for police to get involved.
No, you should not call 911 if the dry cleaner damages your shirt.
You're trying to look for a 24-hour Shoppers Drug Mart pharmacy?
Prescription problems don't qualify either. One person called in to report a domesticated rabbit was wandering loose in a park. Another was looking for help to remove a wasp nest. Fiddler herself took a complaint from someone miffed at McDonald's.
Our caller was very upset that McDonald's hadn't opened their doors yet in the morning.
She let them know 911 is not the place you report missing your McMuffin.
McDonald's not opening their door is not a police issue. This is an inappropriate call for 911.
Another hungry caller lamented the loss of dozens of avocados.
One of my personal favorites was somebody who was really upset that their box of 38 avocados that they got ended up being rotten.
Holy guacamole. And finally, not to be outdone, one British Columbian dialed 911 to alert police to their neighbor's pungent cologne.
Has there been any physical violence or anything other than the spraying of cologne?
It may all make for a good end-of-the-year laugh, but also highlights how much time is wasted dealing with these nuisance calls that could be better used getting help to someone in an actual emergency. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
Still to come, the lessons learned from the Y2K computer fears that dominated the headlines 25 years ago tonight. That's coming up after the break.
Where were you 25 years ago when there was a nervous energy in the air? People around the world concerned about a Y2K digital disaster.
The world anxiously watched to see if there would be a computer calamity as the clock rolled over to the year 2000 from 1999. 25 years ago tonight, the world held its breath over the Y2K computer bug that led to stockpiling emergency supplies and uncertainty.
Are the traffic lights going to work? Is 911 going to work? Are the dispatch systems going to work for fire and police?
Rob Davis was a city councilor back in 1999. The city invested millions to upgrade computers before Y2K. Government agencies and police were concerned computer systems could crash.
We committed to about $160 million to upgrade all the computer systems, to test them, to see if our solutions were going to work.
The TTC and Ontario Hydro tested the network, and subways stopped at midnight as a precaution.
We weren't quite sure about the subway, so what we had to do is have dozens of buses ready to shuttle people.
A possible software glitch was to blame for the mass panic. Computers used a 2-digit code for the year. The fear was computers would misinterpret 00 for the year 1900, not 2000.
The worry was that around the world, all of these systems that used 2-digit dates would suddenly just kind of freak out.
Carmi Levy was an IT specialist back then, ensuring there was no chaos. In the end, no major glitches were reported.
I think it's a testament to just how many resources were put into this. Hundreds of billions of dollars of effort.
Hundreds of billions of dollars was spent globally by governments and corporations in the lead up to check and upgrade their software. Experts say that played a pivotal role. Peter DeJager was among the experts who had sounded the Y2K alarm.
We did our work. We fixed it, for the most part. Now, will we have this problem again in the future? Yes. Different situations.
He points to recent events like the widespread Rogers outage, the cyber attack on the Toronto Library, and the CrowdStrike global tech outage that led to flight cancellations and delays and disrupted banking and healthcare services, with similar problems likely as early as the new year.
And all of these are related to computer problems. Everything is intertwined. It's all connected together. And we're unaware, really, of how thoroughly connected they are.
DeJager says it depends on how often government and companies update their software.
In the U.S., scientists are raising concerns about the mutation of the bird flu virus in an American patient.
They worry it could lead to bird flu spreading more easily person to person. Here's CTV's Allison Bamford on what we know.
Doctors want more answers after finding the avian flu mutated in a Louisiana patient. There's concern the mutations could lead to two things.
A greater ability for the virus to infect human cells, and B, a greater ability for the virus to replicate within human cells, which might make the virus more readily transmissible from human to human.
It's what doctors want to avoid, and so far they have, with no evidence of human-to-human transmission.
It's unknown whether or not this will fizzle out, whether this will continue to persist, or whether this will grow.
What we do know, U.S. ag production will be down this year. Projections show a drop of about 1% as a result of the outbreaks. And both ag and poultry shortages in some U.S. states are raising prices at grocery stores, a side effect Canada is unlikely to see in the near future.
In the U.S. is basically supply and demand, and typically when the avian flu strikes, consumers in the U.S. are actually hit much harder, much more quickly than in Canada.
Canada has supply management tools in place to prevent price instability, and most of the country made it through the fall relatively unscathed by H5N1. BC was the hardest hit, still dealing with 74 active outbreaks.
We haven't seen a new case for a week now. It's too early to say that this year's outbreak is over, but we're cautiously optimistic that we're moving in the right direction.
The risk of avian flu to the general public remains low, and it's not considered a food safety concern. But it is a disease that affects migratory birds, which is why experts say a global effort is needed to address it. Allison Bamford, CTV News, Saskatoon.
Coming up, we'll look back at one of the big stories of the year when it came to wildfires in Western Canada. That's after the break. The town of Jasper is still recovering from a massive wildfire that destroyed parts of the community back in July.
CTV's Kathy Lee was on the ground covering this story last summer and has this look back at the historic blaze that completely changed the tourist town.
Catastrophic drought and extreme heat, conditions ripe for wildfire. A lightning strike and this monster grew quickly, fueled by high winds. A 100-meter wall of flames traveled 5 kilometers in half an hour. It would become the largest wildfire in a century for Jasper National Park. Thousands of tourists and people living there forced to leave on July 22nd.
We're all just praying that, we don't lose everything we have. That would be terrible.
By morning, about 4,000 people took refuge in Valemount, BC.
This was my bedroom last night. I just slept here with my pillow.
Others scattered elsewhere. This couple made their way south of Edmonton.
It's one thing to listen to other communities go through this until you go through it for yourself. Yeah. And it was terrifying.
On July 24th, the flames were on Jasper's doorsteps. A third of the town was engulfed, mostly on the west side. More than 350 structures were destroyed, including the famed Moline Lodge. All that remained, charred skeletons of once special places, including the mayor's childhood home.
I had a glimmer of hope. Came to the street corner and saw a foundation. Hundreds of houses, whole neighborhoods. Just gone.
The fire was indiscriminate. On one side of the street, houses untouched. On the other, complete destruction.
The loss also touching those on the front lines.
Unfortunately, I did lose my own home in that and did notice that when I was out on my patrols. It was pretty overwhelming.
3 weeks later, people returned to face their immense loss. This man owned the L&W family restaurant. Nothing is left.
It's hard. It's heartbreaking. You work 60 years and all of a sudden in one night you lose everything.
As people worked through their grief, some anticipated this nightmare.
We knew it was coming with all the dead trees and pine beetles and whatnot, and they're weren't putting in the fire breaks and whatnot. So I think it's partly government's fault.
But officials maintain they were proactive for years, removing trees and branches, igniting controlled burns, and creating a fire break on the west side.
Steps were taken to protect us, but we simply cannot do enough to protect us against all risk.
But these winds that came and that shifted, it just changed the whole calculus.
Some locals wanted a 5-kilometer wide fire break around the entire town. One expert says it could have helped. However, burning embers travel far.
This fire, even though it was kilometers from town, was already dropping millions and billions of little burning bits of bark and twig onto the town.
On August 17th, Parks Canada declared the wildfire as being held. The same day Morgan Kitchen was remembered. The 24-year-old Calgarian died fighting the wildfire. His bravery not lost on Jasper.
That's more painful.
As summer gave way to fall, the doors of Jasper reopened to tourists.
Having my friend here from Ontario, we decided to come back up and see the mountains.
There was a placard that was in one of the shops which was talking about we value your custom, please spend your money, please help us rebuild.
Because the rebuild will take a long time and there's still much uncertainty. But the people who love and call Jasper home are resolute in returning Canada's jewel back to its former glory. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
All right, that story makes me thankful for the weather that we get here. No major events tonight, especially if you're heading out.
Absolutely. You might want to take a jacket, an umbrella if you're heading out to the fireworks, or if you're going to be lining up for a New Year's Eve party tonight. That's probably the best advice, right, Jess?
We got some rain coming through, but to be honest, we're staying above seasonal, so that is beneficial in a lot of ways. We're not dealing with any kind of major snow event, but it is going to be soggy out there, so the waterproof New Year's Eve fit's probably a good idea. We are watching this Colorado low move its way in as we head throughout the afternoon, set to bring some showers as we round out 2024 and say what up to 2025.